spent a lot of time putting my little graphic together. But you know, comps are super duper important, guys. I mean, they're really foundational to you know, what we do in every aspect. Whether you're working with a seller, whether you're working with a buyer, or you're working with an investor, knowing how to value properties accurately is such an important skill. You know, I've you know, a lot of us on the call have been doing this for a while. Everybody tends to do it a little bit different, you know, and some people use a lot of services out there. You know, there's plenty of services out there like Remine and some of these other services, you know, Cloud CMA, or that'll give you a price. You know, some people obviously that are you know, customers or clients like to use things like Sestimates and all that stuff. But as you know, that's like a 50-50 proposition. You know, you could be spot on, or you could be way off. And the reason I comp the way that I comp is because it allows me to look at the details myself. Because like, if I plug in an address, you know, Francisco, into like Remine or some of these other tools, the issue becomes, I don't know what they're looking at. Like, I didn't see all the details. So, you know, they could be doing a very general search and pulling in properties from neighborhoods that I really don't want to be looking at, or neighborhoods that skew my values, or maybe they're taking into consideration properties that sold, you know, in foreclosure, short sale, whatever the case may be. And they're not giving me the most accurate, you know, value of everything coming in. So that's the reason that I do things this way. Now, one of the things that we want to do, guys, before we get started is kind of open up our toolbox. So I'm going to kind of get out of my presentation and show you the things that I usually have open when I'm looking at properties. So this is what the tabs I like to have open. So showing you my tabs here, we have first and foremost, this is where I log in personally to the dashboard on MLS. So, you know, for those of you in other places, maybe it looks a little bit different, but, you know, you guys should have dashboard.stellarmls.com. That's where you would log in, and then it kind of gives you your entire toolbox. So you see all of these different tools here that the MLS provides you. These are important tools for you to have. Now, I don't necessarily use all these tools all the time. The main ones that I use are the ones that I'm going to show you right now. Besides like Transaction Desk, which is where we do all of our contracts, the tools that I mainly use are the MLS, which is Matrix, iMapp, which is a public records tool that allows me to look at the public record of the property record of the property. Basically, it's like the property appraiser sites for everybody, right? Rather than looking individually to the Orange County property appraiser site or whatever county you're in, we can look at iMapp and actually look at all the counties and all the properties, which makes it super easy. Something else that I usually have open is Google Maps. So I use Google Maps for mainly the street view. So, you know, let's say you guys are going on a listing presentation and you know, you haven't actually been to the property. Well, I want to show up to that listing presentation with the best picture that I can of what the neighborhood looks like, what the properties around it looks like, what the exterior of the property looks like. And Google Street View is just a good way to do that. Now, obviously, if you want to be like top-notch agent, you know, and you want to be super prepared, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to, you know, drive the property, you know, prior to going to your listing appointment. So if your listing appointment's in a few days, not a bad idea to go a few days before and drive the area, check out the neighborhood, maybe even take an exterior photo of the property. Because, you know, as I teach agents, when you put together a nice listing package, always nice to have it personalized and actually having a picture of the exterior front of that property. It makes that seller feel like, man, you really took the time to research this thing, right? So coming up with the numbers is super duper important, having something in your mind. If you're going on a listing presentation, granted, if you have not seen the interior of the property, I don't want you guys coming in here with a number and holding hard and fast to it until you see the interior. So if you ever walk into the listing presentation and they're like, what do you think I should sell for? We're like, you know, you got to look around the property, you got to inspect it, because you're making a lot of assumptions as to what they've done to the interior of the property. So as I always say, when it comes to comps, this is an art and a science kind of mixed together. There's not like one number that is right and the other one that is wrong. But the better and better you guys get at this, you'll start getting like a feeling of what you believe is what I call power pricing, right? What is the right number? So if you're talking to a seller in particular, what I call power pricing is a price that's going to get maximum competition. That's not necessarily the highest price you could legitimately price it. It's a difference, because oftentimes when you're doing the calculations for this, you could say, man, this property could be, priced at this technically, because I see some properties that have sold at this price per square foot. But as you look at all of the clues, you realize that that price isn't going to get you an offer quick. That price isn't going to get you competition and drive the price up. That's a price that'll make the property sit, even though you can technically justify it through the comps, if that makes sense to you guys. So I'll give you an example of that. There's a property across the street from me that I'm about to list here shortly. It was a for sale by owner. I snagged it up. I talked to the guy, and, it's where I live. I know the neighborhood, right? So technically, when I did the numbers, the highest price, like the price point, could be 320. The reality is that I wouldn't price that property higher than 289.9, because I know from what I saw from all the clues that I put together that 320, although I could justify it, is not actually the right price for that property. So that's what I'm going to teach you today, is how do you find that price? How do you find that power pricing? Or how do you find an accurate price for either listing the property or the right price for your buyer to put in an offer? Or on the other hand, if you have an investor who's asking you, hey, look, what's the ARV or the after repair value of this property? And even in that case, what he's really asking is what's the right price to make sure that I sell this property fast when I flip it? Because you don't want to give them the max price that it could be, because that's what a lot of wholesalers do. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten properties from wholesalers. Sometimes, they kind of inflate the numbers because they can technically justify a price. But the problem with that is it's not a price that'll sell quick, right? So if you're advising your investors on that deal, you're going to have to comp it yourself. I would never trust a wholesaler's value on a property. Not that they're trying to do something wrong, but they're trying to make it the most attractive looking as far as an investment is concerned. But when you look at deeper into the numbers, you realize, okay, this is not exactly the price that would make it fly off the market, because an investor is going to want to sell that property within a 3-month period, right? You don't want to put it on there and have that property sit for 6 months. Okay. So that's how important comping is. So, you're going to watch me do it. I just wanted you to kind of know what the tabs are that are open. So you're going to want to watch what I'm doing, not necessarily do it at the same time. But I just wanted you to know what we have going on. Let me let somebody else in. Looks like Josan is coming in. Okay, guys. So let's get back to the presentation here. So this is our toolbox. This is kind of what I use. This is what I have open when I'm looking at properties. Okay. So first and foremost, as I kind of mentioned already, showing clients how you came up with value is one of the best ways to show your value, right? Because this is kind of the intelligent part, the mathematical part of things that what we do. And if you can show a client that you didn't just pull a couple properties up, say they sold for this, and this is how it came up with the price, that's what a lot of agents do, and they lead their clients astray, and it doesn't show your value. But if you can show them that you looked at these, 80 different factors, this is what I looked at. And oftentimes, by the way, guys, I come to the listing presentation, or I come to them with the comps that I use printed out. And what I'll do is I'll circle certain things like days on market, things that I saw in the description, things like that, because it makes you look even better to your client, right? Your client's like, okay, so you went and researched all these properties, you looked at these individual factors, and just simple, that's a Gil Ramos trick, just simply circling something on a listing makes it look like you guys actually did some work, which you did, but it's just a good visual, like, hey, let me show you the things that I looked at on these comps, and this is how I came up with the value. So coming up on the next thing. So here's something that I'm going to show you how to do real quick. And you can take, this will be more relevant. This is obviously based on the Stellar MLS, the one that we use in Central Florida. But if you want to take a screenshot of this or take a picture of this, this is kind of the step-by-step of how you actually create a display. So as you guys know, when you guys pull up properties on the MLS, you get a whole list, you get a whole list of properties, right? They call that the single line display. And the single line display shows you all the property, and it's cool because it shows you all the specs. It shows you the beds, the baths. Now, the default display within your MLS shows you a bunch of information that you might or might not want, and you might or might not want it in that order. So what you can do in the MLS is actually create your own display so that you see the information that you want to see. So these are the steps to do that. And I will do that shortly for you live so you can kind of see how that gets done. Okay, so take a screenshot of this just in case you forget the steps, but this is how it can be done so that you're looking at just the information you want to see and you create your own display. And when you go in there and create your display, you'll actually see a bunch of criteria that you might have not even known that you can search for. I'll tell you how I use this on a pro tip. So I've created a display in there where I pull up the buyer's agent and listing agent's emails, right? So I can actually go into an area where I'm going to be listing a property and find out every other agent who sold the property in that area that might have some buyers for me. And I can do a search for their emails and their phone numbers and things like that. And I can actually get all that information and download it and then send mass emails to those people and things like that. So you can search for a ton of things in there. That's just a little pro tip there. See who's not muted here. Make sure you're muting people.
Hi, bro.
Get him, Todd. Get him. Mute that person.
Hi, Chick.
So step one, when it comes to, I'm just going to go through these steps, and once again, we're going to go through this live. But first and foremost, you're going to want to know what the property specs are, right? We're going to want to know what we're looking at. So oftentimes, if this is for a buyer, oftentimes the property's listed. So all that information will be in the MLS when you do your comps. So you don't necessarily have to go looking somewhere else for how many beds, baths, year build, exterior construction, and all that. That's when you're working with a buyer. However, when you're working with a seller, you usually don't have all this stuff. So you have to go into public records and find it. And I'll show you how we do that. But so just know that before we start, we just got to know what we're comparing things to, because we want to make sure we always compare apples to apples, right? So you're not going to be comparing a 1,000 square foot property to a 3,000 square foot property. Those properties are way too different. The disparity within those two square footages is too big, and it affects the price per square foot so much that you're not going to get an accurate number. So you want to make sure that you're comparing very similar style properties, and ideally those properties will be in the same neighborhood and things like that. In other words, a lot of times, you'll get a seller who's like, oh, but 2 miles away, there's this neighborhood that has $600,000 properties, and they're trying to use that property to justify. No, that doesn't work, because if there's sales in that neighborhood, you're going to have to use the sales in that neighborhood. So beds, baths, square foot heated, year built, exterior construction, acreage. Does it have a pool? Does it not have a pool? Has it been remodeled? Has it not been remodeled? Has the roof been replaced? Has AC been replaced? These are all things that you kind of want to know about before you do specs on the property. So if you're working with a seller, you're going to want to ask them some of that stuff. Hey, out of curiosity, have you done anything to the property prior to me coming to see you? Have you done any remodeling? Have you done any upgrades? What's the age of the air conditioning? What's the age of the roof? Things like that. Those things will affect the value. And then once again, as you see on the bottom here, for listings, use iMapp for specs and to see what they bought it for. So you can also see what the seller bought that property for as well. Not something I would necessarily bring up in a listing appointment, but it's always kind of good to know, hey, look, this person has some equity. They have some room to play with. Just good to kind of know that. So on iMapp, you can see what they bought it for. I use Google Maps once again to kind of see what the exterior of the property is. But sometimes in iMapp, you can also see some exterior pics, which I'll show you here in a second. So basically it's like this, guys. When it comes to comps, what I look at it is it's actually kind of fun for me. You know, when I look at a comp, you know, it's like I'm a detective. Like I'm a very big fan of detective shows. Like almost all my on-demand stuff that I record is like detective dramas or police dramas. I just love looking for clues. I don't know why I love that. I just love looking for clues. So what you're doing when you're doing a comp is you're going in there and you're looking at a bunch of different clues to try to come up with a picture. It's almost like a detective coming to a crime scene, right? They're trying to repiece together what might have happened, right? And they're seeing that, you know, that little shell casing here. They're seeing that little this here. They're seeing that little disturbance over there. And they're kind of coming up with a picture of what they think happened, right? And once again, there's not a specific right answer, but there is an answer that comes to you once you kind of see all these little data points, and then suddenly this kind of number emerges and you're like, man, that's the number right there. And this comes with just practice, guys. I mean, you'll be decent at it at first, but the more and more and more you guys do this, and that's like anything in life, right? Repetition is everything. Practice is what builds your skill and your confidence. It's just repetition, repetition, repetition. I was actually fortunate enough to start when I restarted my real estate career about 6-7 years ago. I started with wholesaling, and I was working with a group based out of St. Augustine, and we were doing a lot of wholesaling in Jacksonville. And so I was tasked with comping all the properties that came in, and over a 6-month period, I comped about 830 properties. And it just kind of built that muscle for me where I was kind of like, okay, this is how I do it. You know, how do I figure out neighborhoods that I've never been to? Well, I can use Google Street View to kind of, you know, roll around here. Okay, this neighborhood's not in a good area of town. I can tell, you know, okay, this, and then I started putting all these clues together, and then I started, you know, getting good at comping. So here's some of the things that you're going to look at that once again, if you take this screenshot of this, and let's say you're coming to a listing appointment, you can discuss with the seller, hey, look, I want to let you know that if anybody comes in this door and says, hey, the price of your home is this because this person sold it for this, you know, Gil says, kick them out. Kick that agent out because they have not looked at this thing thoroughly for you. They are going to do you a great disservice. Let me show you all of the things that I look at. You know, I look at things like days on market. You know, okay, yes, that property sold, but how long did it take to sell? Okay. And by the way, what was the original price of that property? Because if I see a property that took 145 days to sell, well, oh man, that took a long freaking time to sell. Well, it might not be because there's something wrong with the property. It could be that they started it, they overpriced it, which a lot of agents do, right? Which is why you guys need to learn to comp properties when you're working with a buyer, because you can't trust what another agent says. We don't know how they were trained. You know, there's some desperate agents just trying to get a listing, right? So their sellers telling them that it's 550,000. It's really more like 485,000, but they're going to take it. You know, they're going to take the listing, and they don't have enough knowledge and or confidence to tell that seller that they're making a grave mistake. And they are making a mistake by overpricing. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So days on market, what was the original price of that property? Is that why it sat? Because they overpriced it? Let me see where they priced it on initially. Price per square foot. So price per square foot is my number one indicator of how I come up with numbers, right? So it's the best way really to compare apples to apples, right? So I can take different square footages and use a price per square foot to kind of come up with my numbers. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. The interior, is it upgraded or is it shitty, right? Like, it makes a huge difference. You know, if you're saying, hey, I should sell the same price as Susie down the street, but Susie put 40 grand in upgrades, that's a big difference. And the cool thing is, if we're looking at the MLS, I can see the pictures of that property. So I can show my seller, hey, I totally understand. We could sell it for the same price as Susie, but as you can see in these pictures, Susie's put about $40,000 worth of upgrades. If you're prepared to put $40,000 into the home, I can certainly price it at Susie's price. But if you don't have the money to do that, or you're not willing, we're going to have to adjust this price because we want to make sure that we actually get attention and competition for this property. Okay. New replacements. AC, roof, I'm looking at that. So when I'm looking at descriptions in the MLS, it says it right there most of the time. Hey, a roof replaced in 2019, AC replaced in 2020, whatever the case may be. That makes a big factor. People want to feel secure in their home, and they know that those are some of the biggest expenditures. Special circumstances, were there special circumstances to these sales? Was it a distressed sale? Was there a renter in the home, right? That's another reason a property might stay on the market. So if you're looking at a listing, right, and you're like, man, why did this property sit? It looks like the property's fine, or whatever the case may be. You look at it and you're like, oh, you read in the realtor remarks, tenant will be out July 31st. Okay, so you're trying to sell a property with a tenant in it, which, as Todd knows and experienced agents know, man, that's a whole nother story, right? It's really a lot harder to sell a property with a tenant in it, especially one that doesn't let you show it like you want to show it, or might actually be like wrecking that property and making it look terrible, right? So those are special circumstances. Home size differences. Once again, you don't want to compare homes that are way different in square footage. I personally, when I show you how to do it, I look for properties that are about 20% above or below my square footage, right? So, if I had 1,000 square foot home, I'm looking at everything from 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet, right? I'm not going out much outside of those boundaries, because my price per square foot tends to change pretty drastically when you compare two different size properties. Acreage, that matters oftentimes, but usually when you can find enough comps in the same neighborhood, most of the time the lots are the same size, so it doesn't come up as much, but acreage does matter. So that's something to look at. Pool versus no pool. Pools, depending on a neighborhood, might make a significant difference. Sometimes they don't. Maybe it's a $5,000 to $10,000 swing. It's not as big as a lot of people think. Oh, mine has a pool. Well, you're in a $260,000 neighborhood. Having a pool versus no pool is not. It's not like you're in a $1 million neighborhood and somebody's got a $150,000 pool and you don't. Okay, well, that's different. Okay, but in a regular neighborhood, often that doesn't make as much difference as people think. Obviously, the price sold. I want to. My best indicator of price per square foot or what things are selling for are the actual properties that sold. But I also look at the competition. I look at active listings. I'm not just looking at what's sold. I'm looking at what your competition is. Okay, so I'm going to list this on the market for you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, but you want to list it at 320, but there's 3 other properties at 320 right now that are very similar to yours that aren't selling. That's the problem, So that's an important thing to look at. What's your competition and how long have they been on the market and things like that. And then we've got what I call neighborhood threshold. Okay. So neighborhood threshold. Okay. Got it. Thank you, Todd. Neighborhood threshold is a term that I came up with for talking about kind of what is the highest price that something is sold in the neighborhood, right? So this is what I mean by that. I might start doing some research, right? And I'm doing my comps. And let's say price per square foot, I can justify my property being worth, $335,000, okay? But I'm looking at the neighborhood as a whole, and nothing in that neighborhood ever, or at least in the past 6 months, past year, has sold over 320. Well, that makes me believe that the neighborhood threshold is about 320. Like, not a lot of people are going to pay 335 for a home in a neighborhood that has only sold homes up to 320, no matter what I can justify, right? And I'm not saying that that's a hard and fast rule. I'm saying that's one of your clues. That's one of your clues that, hey, look, my price per square foot is semi-accurate. It's coming up with a price of 335, but nobody's ever paid over 320 for a home in this neighborhood. And guess what? I also look around to see what new construction is around too. If you're in an area where it has a lot of new construction, you got to ask yourself this question. If somebody can buy a brand spanking new 2020 home for $335,000, with all the upgrades, are they going to buy a used home in the neighborhood next door for $335? you know, those are your options, right? So those are adjustments that you're going to make. So as you can see, there's all these little touch points that help you kind of formulate that picture. Okay. So let's get down to it. So those were all the things that you kind of take a look at, and so you can give you the picture. So let's actually go into doing some comps. Okay, so let's first and foremost, let's go into the MLS, and I'm going to show you guys how to do your custom comps, okay, or your custom comp display. So as I mentioned in those steps, if you took the screenshot before, this is how you do it. You go into My Matrix here. So if you go to My Matrix, you go into Settings here, okay, and then you go into Custom Displays. If you go into Custom Displays, you can actually create your own displays. If you look at this list here, I have several displays here. So you can see that I've created different displays. This is the one that I use for myself, which is Bob's. I call it Bob's Comp Display. This shows me the things that I want to see when I look at a comp. Because once again, as you know, when you look at that single line display, you've got all these columns of information, but it kind of is a pain in the butt to have to scroll to the right to get to see all the information you want. I want all the information I want to see first. So if I go, if you wanted to add a new display, you could just, you could press add a new display, and you can actually name the display name and actually put whatever criteria you want to see. Okay, so let's say, you know, I could put in, call it test display, and I could go down here and you can see available cross property columns. These are all the things you can search for. Okay, so you can put whatever you want here, and you can actually search for the thing, you know, like days on market, things like that. And then all you do is you press the add button and you add them over to this side over here to the columns you want to see, and you can put them in the order that you want to see them. And then you simply save that display, and now it becomes your display. So I'll just show you the one that I've already done, so you can see what the columns are that I use. Okay, so I'll go into this one. I'll just press edit. Okay, so this is my comp display. So these are the things that I put in mine personally. So if you guys are using the Stellar MLS, you can basically copy this if you want, or if you see something else that you want to see, you can add it yourself. But this is what I put in here. So if you'll see on the right-hand side, I've moved over the things that I want to be able to look at. So one is ML number link. That's just a link to the MLS number and a link to that I can just click on and see the listing. Status, you know, what's the status? Is it active, pending, or sold? The address, the heated area, the beds, bathrooms total, the close price, right? What price did it actually sell for? The list price. And then SP-SQFT is sold price per square foot. That's going to be one of my best indicators of value and what I use the most to come up with numbers. List price per square foot is essentially the same thing, but it hasn't sold yet. It's for properties that are still active or pending, and it's telling me what the list price per square foot is. So it's not as accurate as the sold price because it hasn't sold yet. But I like to look at it anyway. Year built, obviously, lot size in acres, pool, private, yes, no. Does it have a pool? I have ADOM, which is average days on market or active days on market, actually. So it's active days on market and then combined days on market. So combined days on market shows you, like, for instance, if somebody takes the property off the market, you know, for a few weeks and then puts it back on, well, the combined days on market, still, the clock still runs. So if I see a difference in those two numbers, that's a clue. Okay, well, they took it off the market. I wonder why. Why did they take it off the market? Why did it come back on? Did it go under contract and it went back on? Did they take it off to make some repairs? What happened here? So these are the things that I look at. And once again, you can search for them down here. So if I wanted to search for the ML link, there it is. ML number link, I would go here, I would press add, and it would add it over to my selected columns. Okay, so that's what you can do with all those criteria. And once again, you just, once you're all done, you just press save, and now you have that saved as one of your displays. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, so now let's get to it. Let's do some comps, and let me show you how I do it. So let me go back to the chat to see the addresses that you guys put in here. Let me see if I can see, where's the chat? Okay, so let's start with Todd's property, and which is 7036 fence line. Now, Todd, is this a listing or is this for one of your buyers?
Buyer.
It's a buyer. Okay, so the property is currently listed on the MLS, correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so on this particular case, guys, all our information or the specs of the property are going to be in the MLS, so it kind of saves us a step. Okay, but just so you know, and we'll go into this, 'cause I'm sure some of these, Miriam, is yours a listing by any chance?
Yes, a potential one. They're just curious.
Perfect. No worries. This is what we're here for. We're doing this for practice. We're just doing repetition. So this is perfect. So on the second one, I'll show you how to find the specs. On this first one, we don't really need to do that because this property is listed. So this is the way that I do comps. Okay. So we're going to go to search residential detail. Okay. So it's bringing up my criteria page, and it's actually quite simple. I don't put very specific, I don't get too specific up front. And the reason I don't get too specific in my criteria is you don't want to knock out some information that you might need first. Because sometimes if you get too specific, you don't pull up enough comps, and you don't get all the information. I rather pull up more comps at first, and then I can narrow it down after. So in other words, I might not narrow it down by beds and baths, up front. But if mine is a 3-2 and I end up pulling up, 23 properties and 13 of them are 3-2s, I'm like, man, I got plenty of 3-2s. I could probably narrow this down to only 3-bedroom and 2-bath homes, and I'll still have a ton of comps to work with. But until I get to that point, I keep it kind of general. So this is what I do, guys. So on the left-hand side here, I click active, I click pending, and I click sold. Because remember, I'm looking at the whole picture. I want to see what's on the market. I want to see my competition. Pending are properties that are under contract currently. Now, pending properties aren't going to show me what the contract is for. Okay, but through the clues, through being a detective, I can often gauge where I think that contract might be. For instance, if that property went pending in 3 days, I can pretty much bet that the contract is close to asking price because it just flew off the market. Okay, so you'll notice when I click pending and sold in the Stellar MLS, it automatically puts 0 to 180 days, which is 6 months. Okay, so 0 to 1, which is typically what an appraiser looks like, which is the other reason that you want to get this right, guys. So when you're talking to a seller and they're saying to you, no, I want to price it at this overpriced price. Well, that's great. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, understand that, 98% of the people who are going to put an offer on this property are going to need financing, which means they're going to go through a bank, which means that the bank is going to get an appraiser and they're going to do an appraisal. And they're going to do the same thing that I'm doing right now. And unfortunately, if we're way off, it's going to cause us massive problems when it comes to the deal, besides the fact that your property is going to sit on the market because it's overpriced, right? So we'll talk about that more and more in depth of why you don't want to overprice. But here's the deal. 6 months out, they're looking at it, okay? And we can adjust these numbers as we see fit, depending on what we find, okay? So moving down, I usually click in the special sales provision. I usually click none. And the reason I do that is because in this section, what it's asking me is the MLS going to look for properties that are auction, bank owned, short sale, in addition to traditional sales? Traditional sales meaning there was no, distress situation. There wasn't any funky things going on. It was just a typical seller, selling their property with no issues. Okay. Usually I click none because I don't want to see short sales. I don't want to see bank owns. I don't want to see auctions because oftentimes those prices end up being less. Now, granted, these days, those even bank owned properties aren't selling that much lower than traditional properties. Banks aren't giving out the same kind of deals they used to. So you could technically not click this, but for now I'm going to click it because this is usually what I like to see is traditional sales. Okay. And then we're going to look at property styles. I'm assuming this is a single family home, Todd? We'll find out in a second. So it's most likely.
Yes, Bobby. Sorry.
Single family. Okay, cool. All right. So, so single family home. So all I did once again, guys, on the first side, active pending sold. We're looking at 6 months back. Special sales provision none, and then single family residence. Then I hop over here to this side, and just on the onset, the only thing that I narrow it down by at the beginning, because once again, I'm keeping it general because I don't want to narrow it down too much at the beginning because you'll look up and you'll be like, man, I don't have a lot to look at. So I just want to make sure we narrow it down by this. So Todd, because I don't have the listing pulled up yet and we haven't looked it up, well, actually, let me just show you how to do this. This is in what county, Todd? Seminole?
It's Independence, Orange County.
Orange County? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I got to log out.
Okay, no worries.
All right, man.
All right, no worries. So Sylvie, I'm going to make you, let's see if Sylvie's still there. Sylvie, you still there? Yeah, Sylvie's still there. All right, Sylvie,
I can do it, Bobby.
You can do it? All right. I'm gonna make you a co-host. And then just mute anybody that you have to mute, or watch the people that are coming in participants wise in case somebody comes in late and let them in to the training. Okay, so all right, so we're looking on this side here. So square foot heated. So right now, because Todd left, I don't actually know what the square footage of this property is right now. So I'm gonna show you how to find it real quick with iMapp. So here we go. So iMapp, so first and foremost, when you're looking at iMapp, this is what it looks like. You wanna make sure you get your county right. So if you ever put in an address and you don't find anything and it tells you I have no results for this address, your first culprit is usually you have the wrong county, okay? So make sure you get the right county. So he said Orange County, I'm good with that. And then here where it says property street address contains, I usually have contains because it includes everything. And try to be general with this too. Don't get too specific. This is a very sensitive system. I believe it was 7036 fence line. And that's all I'm going to put in here. So I'm going to click enter and see what comes up. Okay, page you requested. There was an error. Okay, try that again. That's weird. 7036 fence line. One more time, no matches. Okay, so let me see. Might be 2 words. Let's try that. It's that sensitive, guys. So if it is 2 words, you know, it'll tell you that it didn't find any results for it. So seems to be kind of acting a little bit slow on me here. Am I correct, Marissa, that he put 7036 fence line? Was that the address? Do I have the right address? Yeah, I got it.
He put it as 1 word though.
He did. Yeah, I know, but I tried it as 1 word and it got kicked back to me. So there it is. Yeah, it is 2 words. You see how sensitive that was, guys? You see, I put in fence line as 1 word and it didn't come up. I put it in as 2 words right here and it came up. So perfect example of how sensitive the system is. So make sure you get that right. Let me let somebody in here. Bianca. Okay. So if you scroll down here, so you'll see this. So let me show you what iMapp looks like because this is one of the strongest tools that you have as far as looking information up. So you see on the top left, the property address, you can see the owner's names. You'll need this when you're doing contracts. If you want to get the owner's names correctly, you're going to want to see that. You can see the actual mailing address for the owner. So sometimes this address is different because the owners don't live there. It's a rental property, but these people do. They live there. You can see the zoning. You can see how much the lot size is. This one's 0.2 acres, so just under a 1/4 acre. You can see the tax information, what they're paying in taxes. They're paying about $4,800 a year in taxes. And then we can see, as I told you before, we can see what they bought it for, right? So we know that they bought it for $310,000 back in 2015. Okay, so this is 5 years later. We're going to see where we're going to be selling this property for. Okay, now if we look down here at building information, and by the way, if for some reason you don't see some of this information, feel free to scroll up here to the top right, because it means that maybe you didn't have the detailed report checked, or there wasn't the sales history or something wasn't checked, or building information and things like that. So for some reason your display doesn't look like this, make sure that you're clicking all these things that you want to see. So once again, here are the specs of the property, right? We know it's a 4.4. And what I usually do when I look this up, I just write it down. I just take a little piece of paper and I say, okay, it's a 4.4. It's 3,547 square feet, heated square feet. It was built in 2006. Okay. It's a 2-story building. It says, it's built out of block, and looking at this, it says pool. No. So it doesn't have a pool, has a garage and all that good stuff. So now I know, but once again, this property is going to be in the MLS. So I'll see all this stuff, but this is how you would look it up for a listing situation where you didn't have this. But in this particular case, because I was looking for the heated square feet, I went into iMapp and now I found my information. So let's go back to Matrix. Okay, so now we know that the property is 3,547 square feet. So I'm gonna take out my calculator, and I'm gonna put 3,547, and I'm gonna add 20%. Okay, because I want to look at properties that are 20% above, because that's my range, right? So it gives me 4,256 square feet. Okay, so I'm going to just round it up to 4,300 square feet. So my top range will be 4,300 square feet. Okay, and I can put ranges in here. All I have to put is a dash in between the two numbers. Okay, so I go back, I put 3,547, and I subtract 20%. Okay, that gives me 2,837. I'm going to round it down to 2,800 square feet. Okay, so you can see I put a range here. The square foot heated, I'm only going to be looking at properties that are 2,800 to 4,300 square feet. If I go outside that range, that's not what an appraiser is going to do. And once again, it's going to skew the numbers. So this is all I do for now on this page. Okay, all I did was, once again, active pending sold, special provisions none, property style, single family residence, because I want to look at apples to apples. I can't compare condos to single families or single families to townhomes. I want to be as specific as possible. Okay. And then what I do is I either go to this tab here where it says map, or I go right here to where it says map search. Either one will take you to the same place. And now I go to the map. Okay. And this is what I do. I go into this little place right here on the top right, guys. It says jump to address, because this will zoom me right into the neighborhood, right into the address I'm looking for. So I'm looking for 7036 Fence Line, Orlando. Okay. So when I click that, bam, it zooms me right into this neighborhood. Okay. So now I'm looking at this neighborhood. Okay. And if you look at what's going on here, it's showing me that looks like there's these green ones are active properties, right? So this is 3 active properties and I have 3 solds. That's pretty good. And once again, these are all in my price range. I mean, in my square footage range. So I should be looking close to apples. Okay. So 3 solds is kind of the minimum I'm looking for in a neighborhood. I'd like to have more solds to look at. Now I can kind of zoom out and see if I see more things happening. But my issue here is that I gotta figure out if all these properties are part of the same neighborhood. So I don't want to be going out, let's say, to this section over here and this be a totally different neighborhood. Now it seems to me that this neighborhood here is all part of kind of the same area around Lake Hancock, but you can see some price disparities here, can't you? Just scrolling over, 393 sold. This one sold for 410. This one sold for 400, right? Now look at this one. This one sold for 610. This one sold for 620. Now I asked you guys, let me see. Let's take a closer look at this because I want to see something here. What I was looking at was this, guys. So I was looking to see if these properties were on the water. okay? Because 610 might be what people are paying for properties on the water, but as you can see, these properties are not on the water. They're interior properties here. They're not one of these properties, okay? So let's go back to this neighborhood because I think that this neighborhood's a little bit different, and I have 3 solds here. So this is what I'm going to show you guys. I want to just look at this area. So if you look here at the top part where it says different shapes that you can draw, right? Because right now, if you look here at the top left, it says it's showing me 25 out of 5,000. Why is that? Well, I haven't narrowed down my area. Okay, it's telling me that there's over 5,000 properties for sale basically in Florida or Central Florida. Okay, so obviously I haven't narrowed it down. What I really want to look at is just this piece. So you can do that by basically using a shape just to draw outside of this area. Now, there's different shapes. There's a radius, there's a rectangle you can draw, and there's a polygon that you can draw, right? So you can draw weird shapes if the neighborhood's a weird shaped neighborhood. In this particular case, I can probably draw a rectangle around it. I will say that I don't like using this radius feature. A lot of people like to use this feature. And actually, if you look at the criteria, you can say something like within 1 mile of a certain address. So, or within a quarter mile of our address, which is 7036 fence line. I don't like that because what it does is it draws a circle around that, and it might capture neighborhoods that I don't want to look at. So I'll give you an example of that. So what if I did a radius and I put it here, okay? Well, I draw a radius, and now I'm taking almost probably three neighborhoods. I've got this neighborhood, $1.15 million. I got a 610, I got 610, and then I've got my section of the neighborhood that seems to be selling in the 400s. So that's bad for me because if I drew a radius now, I'm getting some really skewed numbers, okay? So this is a perfect example why I don't draw radiuses, because if you did that, it would have caught these, which I don't think are the same animal, but why is this one selling for 1.1? Well, partly it's underwater, but I believe that these are different neighborhoods here. So let me delete this shape and just capture this little section right here, and I can do that with a rectangle, okay? So bam, let's just take a look at these for right now. So let's go into our results. And this is where I show you guys how to do what we just talked about earlier, which is, remember when I set up a custom display? Well, you see right here where it says display, guys? I can click down here and I can find my custom display. There's Bob's comp display. So as you can see in this kind of search display, which is the default, there's a lot of information here, but some of the information I want is all the way down here, like days on market. And some of this stuff I don't need to necessarily see, and it's taking up a lot of space. So what I will do is I'll say, okay, let me go to Bob's comp display. And now it's showing me just the stuff that I want to see right now, okay? It's showing me just the stuff I want to see. It's all on one screen, and just makes it a lot easier for me to look at. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. So once again, guys, here is our subject property, because we're working with a buyer, and Todd told you that this thing is listed, and there it is. There's 7036 fence line. So we can actually take a look at what this property is selling for. So let me show you some things right off the bat that we can notice. Remember I told you how important price per square foot is? That's one of the first things I look at. Now, check this out. This column here is sold price per square foot. Okay, that's why you see it blank here, because it's not listed anymore. It's sold, right? So sold price per square foot, it looks like we have some properties here selling at 132, 134, and here's one that sold 115 a square foot. That's a big difference, and we need to find out why that happened, and we will in a second. But let's take a look how the fence line property that Todd's buyer is looking at compares. Well, his is at 117 a square foot. Right off the bat, guys, what does that say to you? Well, that's not a bad price per square foot considering what's sold. I mean, I've got two in the neighborhood in the same kind of square footage range that sold as high as 134. You do have one, the lowest one, okay, sold for 115, and we'll find out why that is. Notice that it spent 148 days on the market. Once again, we'll find out why that is. But Here's this property at 117. Right off the rip, I'm thinking that this $117 a square foot is not a bad price for this property. This property seems to be decently priced, but we'll find out. Okay, so let's take a look at what the subject property looks like. And this is probably one of my favorite. I love looking at pictures of properties. Okay, so let's take a look at this property. Just to right off the rip, let's just take a look at what it looks like. Okay, nice little, cute little property. You know, nice little porch, looks decently well maintained, really nice floors, decent, you know, pretty decent pictures here. Let's make sure this is not Todd's listing in case I go off on something and insult Todd about it. No, it's not Todd's listing. So so we go in here, nice flooring, nice paint, very clean. It's got tile. Looks like it has carpet in this kind of office workroom situation. You know, some interesting stuff on the walls here. Probably won't appeal to everybody, these sayings and stuff like that. Just pro tip, you know, if you have something, a property like this, and the seller is willing to maybe paint these some neutral colors, it's sometimes not a bad idea if it's not going to cost them a lot of money. Because although I don't hate this, you know, people will look at stuff like that and will be like, you know, they might not like it. Okay. So, you know, decent property, good shape, decent countertops, nothing super special, but nice. Okay. This is a nice little feature. Some nice brick here on the front, stainless steel appliances. Okay. Another pro tip, guys. So if you guys ever take pictures with your phone, make sure that you take pictures with your phone horizontally and not like this. This picture you're seeing right here was a picture taken like this, which, as you can see, leaves these big white gaps on left and right. And it just immediately says, okay, this is a cell phone pic. And it just doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as crispy. Notice the difference. Nice full picture, looks beautiful, okay? And then bam, now you got a cell phone picture, okay? The other pro tip that I'll tell you guys when you're listing a property is, you see this crap here? Take it off. When you talk to your seller, you need to let them know that you've got to have the authority to move things around to make your property look as beautiful as possible, because people will make decisions based on this, right? On pictures, right? They're going to scroll a few times, okay? So take this stuff off so they just see nice, clean appliances. Take all that stuff that's personal to the seller and take it off. It makes a huge difference, okay? If I were taking this picture again, I would probably take out this mat. So, and this is not a great picture, by the way. It doesn't really show the kitchen that well. It's a little blurry as well, if you can tell. But all this stuff, take it off the countertops. Even this would be worth taking off the counter so you can see a clean countertop. Guys, I'm telling you, these pictures make such a huge difference. Okay, so carpet, something to notice. Most people these days don't like carpet. You know, I'm not saying that it's a deal killer, but they would prefer to have either tile or wood or fake wood or whatever the case may be. And if we're looking at comparable properties that don't have carpet, I can tell you that that's going to be a better selling point for them. So taking a look at the property, you know, it's a cute property. Okay, so far so good. You know, a lot of different colors here. Okay, but the good thing I see about this property is it seems very well maintained. Okay, so I'm getting that feeling from this property. Another crappy. Now, here's something that they did. They actually did take the shit off the refrigerator, and then they put this picture at the end. Doesn't make sense. They should have replaced. Well, actually, take that back. This is a different refrigerator. This is a refrigerator somewhere else. I can tell by the flooring. So this is a different refrigerator that just stuck at the end. Once again, they took a vertical photo, and now they're showing photos of the rest of the neighborhood and the amenities. That's fine. Okay, cool. So we got a good picture now, guys, of what this property looks like. So this is our subject property. Properties, notice too, properties only been on the market 15 days. Okay, listed at $415,044. We take a look at the description, right? So let's take a look at the upgrades. Loads of space and upgrades. Newly painted exterior and interior. Okay, so they newly painted it. Newer hard scraped wood floors. Okay. Bunch of different stuff here. I always like to look to see if they replaced a roof or an AC. Those are the big expenditures, you know, but basically it looks like, you know, breakfast area, newer built-in bench seating. These are all kind of updated master bath with new espresso vanity quartz. Additional upgrade includes central vacuum, surround sound, newer sealer fans. So it has some upgrades to it. Didn't see included hot tub, planter boxes, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see that there's a new roof or a new AC or anything like that. So we got a good picture of what our property is about, okay? Now, let's go back to our single line display and let's take a look at the other comps for this property. So ours is a 4.4. Let's take a look at this 5.4, okay? This 5.4 here was built in the same year as ours, sold for $115 a square foot. I'm looking at it first because I'm wondering why it sold at $115 and some of these other ones sold for $134. Okay. Now, notice another thing too, guys. Notice that the two that sold for $132 a square foot were 2,900 square feet. Ours is 3,500 square feet, which is considerably bigger. Okay. That's one reason why the price per square foot is lower. This is why I don't have you guys compare properties that are way different in size, because as square footage gets bigger, usually price per square foot drops. Okay, it's just a natural drop. Okay, so that could be part of the reason that this is at 115, but it also spent 148 days on the market, so there's got to be a reason for that. This one has a pool, ours doesn't, but once again, that might or might not be a huge deal when it comes to this. So let's take a look at this one that sold for 115 a square foot and see how it compares to ours. Okay. So out of curiosity, I want to see where this property was priced initially. It took 148 days to sell. So once again, we're just detectives here right now. Okay. So we're looking at these clues and we're saying to ourselves, okay, why did this take 148 days to sell? Okay. And why did it sell for 115 a square foot when other things sold for 130? Okay. One clue is big size, you know, this decent size difference, you know, probably around 600 square feet. Okay. But what I can take a look at here is scroll down to the bottom of this listing. Okay. And what I can do is I can look at the original price that it was priced at first and foremost. So the original price was $449. Okay. And the last list price was $439. So they dropped it 10 grand at some point. Okay. They dropped it 10 grand at some point, but they ended up selling it for $410. So they dropped it to $439, but still got offered like $20,000 or $30,000 less for that. There has to be a reason for this. Part of the reason might be, you know, well, not main reason, but they're offering a little bit less commissions. We like to offer 3%. They're offering 2.5%. Okay. But check this out. Terms, cash deal. So here's the clue. This was bought in cash for $410. Usually you can get a better price if you offer cash. Okay, so they probably got an extra $10,000 or so off this or more because they said, hey, look, man, I got cash. I'll give you $410 for it. I'll close in 10 days. Okay, so that happens a lot of times. So cash is a factor here. We're picking up all these clues, but let's see if there's anything else in the history. So you can actually look the information in the history of the property here. Okay. And we can see that it went on the market new on August of 20th, 2019. There was a price decrease 2 months later to $439. After that, it still took another 3 months for it to go pending, and then it sold at $410. Looks like it actually was also listed before and it didn't sell. And look at this. They listed it in 2018 for $489. They decreased it to $459. And then the listing expired at when it was still listed at $459 on March of 2019. Once again, let me tell you what happened. This was probably an agent that was desperate to get a listing and overpriced this property. And this is why I'm telling you, not just for you, but for the seller, don't do this. Don't overprice a property, guys, because this is what happened. Let me show you exactly what happened to this agent. This agent came in, and they might or might not know that this was or was not the right price, okay? They might or might not know that it was or wasn't the right price. But let's say the seller said, no, I think my property is worth $489 or whatever the case may be. Okay, so they came in and accepted that. Okay, bam. They went and they put this on the market. You know, a couple months later, they decided to lower it 30 grand. But here's the problem, guys. That property sat for 60 days. And every day that that property sat on the market, you lost leverage. You wasted your first impression. You got no competition. Okay. You got nobody looking at the property, and the property sits for 60 days. Well, what does the agent do? Then they have to go back with it, with, you know, their tail in between their legs and convince the seller to drop it 30 grand. Okay. To drop it 30 grand. So now, not only have you lost this leverage, can you mute, please? Never mind, I got her. Okay, so somebody out there with their kids in the background. I'm gonna catch you. Okay. So what happened was with this agent, which once again, I'm teaching you guys not to do this. Look, they priced it at 49. They let it sit for 60 days, lost leverage for 60 days, right? Had to come back to the seller and convince them to drop it 30 grand, which doesn't make them look very good, does it? Okay, they drop it. And even though they drop it, it goes on for another, 4 months. And then it expires. Guess what, guys? Well, they went back on the market again. But was it the same company? Was it the same realtor? Nope. It was Metro Brokers now. So that first agent just spent 6 months of their lives overpricing a property. And guess what? Even if that agent at the beginning had told that seller that they needed to price it at the right price, guess what? The seller blamed the agent, went and chose another agent, and these sons of a guns priced it at $449 to start. Man, that's happened to me before, guys. I'm teaching you, don't do this. Make sure you price this property right from the get-go, because 6 months of your life will be gone. They'll give it to another agent, and then they'll price it right, and that agent's going to get the 3% commission, and you're not going to get anything. Okay? Don't do this. So now we know what happened with this property. We solved the mystery, right? It's been on the market before. It's been overpriced. The seller sort of overpriced it a little bit maybe at the beginning, but not too bad. They lowered it 10 grand again, and somebody offered him cash. And this is what happens. People get desperate. Now, guess what? If they would have priced it at $449 when they first listed it back in 2018, they probably would have gotten way more for the property. They might have sold it at $440, but now the property sat forever, and they ended up selling it to a cash buyer for $410. Don't do this to your sellers, please. Okay, so now we know what happened with this one. We kind of got a good idea of what's going on with it. And so let's take a look at what it looks like on the inside. That could be the other reason why it didn't sell. So first and foremost, the exterior of this property doesn't seem as appealing as the one that we just saw, the subject property. I'm sure some of you guys would agree. So it looks a little bit more beat up on the outside. Okay, nothing real special about the exterior. Look, grass grown out. Some of the grass looks like it's dying. There's no color in the front. So this property just on the exterior right off the rip does not look that great. Okay, another pro tip, guys. So your first picture always has to be your exterior front. Okay, that's what the MLS requires you to do. But the next 4 or 5 pictures, or the next pictures, should be the sexiest things about your property. Don't get into this point of putting things, putting pictures, like for instance, a lot of people like to kind of say, well, let's start with the front door, then let's start with the foyer, and actually walk people through a property. Look, if your foyer doesn't do anything for you, that's not the first picture I want to see. If your kitchen is the sexiest part of your property, put the sexy pictures up front. So this exterior front picture right off the rip is not that great. Okay, it's not centered. I'm seeing another house here on the left. I don't like that. I'd rather them have taken, and I understand maybe they couldn't take a great front picture because of this tree, but this is not a good exterior front picture. It could have been done better. Okay, this one's a little bit better, but I don't like it that much. And then their third picture, it's a plain pool with crappy stains on the left. I don't know why they chose that picture. That can't be, I'm assuming, unless the interior is terrible, which we'll see, that's not their best picture. So here we are with this whole, we're going to start at the foyer nonsense, and we're going to show you some weird statue and a couch. I don't know what this does to help sell this property, okay? And this is the problem. You got to make sure you put the sexy pictures up front, okay? So this property looks to have a lot of carpet, okay? Those drapes are probably not that great, depending on your style. I don't want to offend anybody, but not what I would use. Kind of dated a little bit. You know, decently well maintained, but nothing special. Not like the property we just saw, right? Our subject property had that nice brick island. Remember that, guys? This one's kind of plain. Not that many upgrades. You know, the wood floors are okay, but not as good as my property. I don't know. You know, what is the value of this picture, guys? I don't know. You know, I don't know what the value is of showing this half wall, couple doors, and a lamp. These aren't good pictures, guys. So don't do this to your sellers. Make sure you take the best pictures. And granted, this property is not that amazing, but you know, this bathroom's not helping you. You don't need this picture per se. You know, you just show the best pictures you can. And, you know, you have to price a property like this right, because I'm looking at this property and it needs updating. Okay. And, you know, for that, you know, even this picture is not that great. I mean, the roof looks dirty, you know, I don't know if I would have used it. So, you know, this is what costs sellers a lot of money, you know, simply showcasing the property properly on the MLS will do it. So I've got a good picture now looking back at and I'm going to check the chat real quick, because I haven't been looking at the chat. I see there's 5. But yeah, Rebecca says pressure washing needs to be done in landscaping. Home is dark. No me gusta. Right. Robert had to leave. No worries. Cool. So, just wanted to make sure that I saw all the stuff going on with the chat. Okay. So let me hide the chat. And okay, so now let's take a look at this. So we saw our subject property. We know it's nicer than the one that sold, but once again, I'm looking at this price per square foot, guys. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Property's been on the market only 15 days. This crappier property sold at 115 per square foot. The other 2 properties sold at 130 a square foot. So now let's take a look at some of these other properties and see what's going on with it. So this one here is a 4.3. I want to look at this one first because mine is a 4.4, so it's pretty close to that. But mine is considerably bigger than this one. Okay, so I could understand my price might be higher than this one. So mine's our property here is listed at 415. This one's 390, but it's also 600 square foot smaller, and it's a 4.3. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and this one also doesn't have a pool like ours, but check this out. It also took 153 days to sell. So let's take a look at what happened here. Okay, so let's take a look at this property. All right, so 153 days to sell. Let's do the same thing we did before. Why did that happen? Okay, let's take a look at the original price. So it started at 419. Okay, so it started at 419. For that size of property, it was probably overpriced. Okay, so it started at 419. Look at this, guys. They're only offering a 2% commission. That ain't going to help you sell a property. You know, paying realtors less does not help you sell properties. You know, I always like to suggest, if possible, to pay the agents 3%, 2.5% at the minimum. Now you're coming in here, you're overpricing it, right? This is a desperate realtor, probably came in here. Hopefully that's not anybody we know. So the realtor probably came in there, was desperate for the listing, took a reduced commission, right? Which is probably why she probably did it. She probably did this shit for 4% total, right? Did 2% for themselves, 2% for the other agent, which is bad, just bad business, right? And they overpriced it. Man, that's like a triple whammy. You know, that's going to be a tough time selling it. That's why it spent that many days on the market. You overpriced it and did that. Once again, we can look at the history of this property and see what happened. Listed on 9/11/2019 at 419. By January, several months after, they finally lowered it to 410. They decreased it finally to 390, and then about 11 days later, they finally get a contract. Well, you know, you could have saved yourself 6 months of your life and probably gotten a higher price if you would have priced it at 390 from the get-go. If you would have priced it at 390, you would have gotten competition, and somebody might have paid you 395 for it, maybe even 400. But no, you had to overprice it. Then you're playing defense the whole time. Months and months pass by. You're looking terrible as an agent. So don't overprice this property, okay? If they would have done their comps right, like I'm teaching you to do, they wouldn't have done this. By the way, they also took a discounted listing. They paid the agent only 2%. Guys, this is what happens, 153 days on the market, right? And guess what? That person had to make a mortgage payment for 153 days. They had to pay the insurance for 153 days. This cost this seller a significant amount of money, okay? But let's take a look at this property and see how it compares to us, because the price per square foot is still stellar compared to ours, okay? So pretty clean looking property on the outside. But look, I am now on picture 5, and have I even seen the interior, guys? What are we doing here? Tell me how this front door helps me sell this property. It doesn't. It should have been the exterior front picture. And once again, my 4 or 5 sexiest pictures. You know, this is a nice picture of the front. Okay. Bam. My next one I should be looking at wood tile floors or amazing views or amazing kitchens. No, I'm still looking at, okay, I'm looking at the overhead. Okay. I'm looking at the overhead a little bit farther away. Great. Wasted another picture. Remember, people are choosing this by swiping their phone 4 or 5 times and then they're moving on. Okay. Okay. Now I'm looking at the front door. Great, man. This is a great picture. Oh, now I'm looking at an empty foyer, whatever the case may be, a door open, nice. That's not the best part of this property. Now, this property is vacant. It's hard to figure out, you know, what's best, but this is not a bad picture. This might have been one of my first ones. I don't know. Now, this might have been my second picture right here, guys. Doesn't this looks attractive, you know? And this actually must have been, this could be fake staged, guys. So this is, I think this is a fake staged type of situation, because check that, you know, the picture before was this. Looks like they might have fake staged it or something like that to kind of give you something, but that's a nice second picture. Why am I looking at the door on my fifth picture? I don't know. Okay. So here's another nice picture. Could have been my third picture. Okay. Okay. Empty room again. Okay. Not a terrible picture here. It's interesting. The one thing I do notice about this is the flooring's kind of unique. It's like a lot of mixed flooring. If you guys notice that, it's like this tile flooring here, and then it kind of switches to this kind of flooring here, kind of switches to some different stuff. So, you know, it's an interesting home, but it's not bad. So it looks pretty clean, you know, nothing too special, but it's a nice, clean looking home. Okay. So, and looking at all this, doesn't look to have the carpet, which is great. I think that's a good selling feature for this home, and probably one of the reasons that it sold for that much. So nice backyard. I think ours is even nicer than that. So here's the deal, guys. So if I am working with this, so we can kind of end this comp. I hope this is giving you a good kind of general display of the things that I'm looking at. But if I'm looking at this, and once again, I'm working with a buyer, Todd's thinking about what to offer, I would say this $117 a square foot is not bad, okay? He might be able to get a little bit less on it. Maybe he offers full price with some closing costs for this. But the thing that will help me determine what I'm going to offer, guys, is the second step. So when you're working with a buyer, I say you have to do 3 things, okay? One is comp the property, right? So now we've comped it, and actually $415 doesn't seem like a bad price at all, okay? This seems actually like a very decent price for this property. The second thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to call the listing agent, and I'm going to ask the listing agent, what do they have any other written offers? If so, can you tell me where those offers were at? And I always say it like this. I was like, hey, first of all, when you call a listing agent, start start that process off with a friendly conversation. Like, I'm always trying to build a great relationship with the other side. So, you know, if I'm calling this agent up, right? If I'm calling up Andrew, I'm smiling. Hey, Andrew, how you doing, bud? Yeah, Bobby with eXp Realty. How are you? Oh, good, doing good, fantastic. Hey, look, man. I'm looking at 7036 Fence Line Drive. My client is actually trying to pick between yours and a couple other homes. So I set the stage for them knowing that, hey, you're not the only, thing in town here. Okay. So I don't want to let them know, it's kind of like that same philosophy of like, you don't want to go to the car lot and act like, you love this car, right? Because they're going to charge you more for it. So I come in, hey, look, my client's looking at this property and a few other properties. Out of curiosity, do you have any written offers already on the property? I just want to make sure we submit a winning offer. Oh, and they might tell you, hey, yep, got an offer on the table. Can you tell me kind of where it's at? Well, it's pretty close to full price, but not full price. They're asking for some closing. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay. So that gives me some information. So I call the listing agent. I find out what's going on. I build a good relationship and see how much they'll tell me. The less I talk, the better. The more questions I ask, the better. It'll give me more information. People feel the need to answer your questions, so they will. So I got a good picture now. Now, if I'm Todd, I've comped the property. I say 15 is a pretty good price. I've talked to them. The property's only been on the market for 15 days. It's gotten a lot of activity, but they don't have an offer yet. So what that makes me feel like is, hey, I have some room here. So I could offer, I think this is a decent price. I could offer $415. And if I need closing costs, maybe ask them for $8,000 in closing costs. Or maybe I offer, $410 or $405 for this property, whatever the case may be. And I would feel confident doing that. And once again, there's properties in this neighborhood that sold for, $130 a square foot. Okay. So just for shits and giggles, let's go ahead, just so you guys can start doing these computations. Okay. Do this calculation, guys, for me and put your answer in the chat. Let's go ahead and compare it to this property here. This property sold for $132 a square foot. So this property sold for $132 a square foot. Okay. The square footage of my property is 3547. If I were to apply $132 a square foot to my property at 3547, technically, what could the price of my property be? Okay. So I'm looking in the chat right now to see what the answers are. So remember, our property is 3547 square feet, and so Miriam says 468,204. I'm gonna double check you. Okay, so 132 times 3547. Yep, 468,204. You're right on the money, Miriam. So this is a perfect example. Technically, guys, we could justify a price of, things have sold for 132. Yes, this property was smaller, but let's say I gave this a little bit of a buffer. Let's say, okay, that I said, well, look, this property is a little bit bigger, so my price per square foot is probably lower. Let's do 122 a square foot. So let's subtract $10 a square foot from this 132. Let's do 122 times 3547. Okay. It still gives me 432,000. Okay. But let's take a look at what's sold. This is what's sold in my square footage range. The highest in the last 6 months has been 410. Remember that neighborhood threshold I talked about? So technically I could justify $122 a square foot, guys, but nobody has bought a property in this neighborhood over 410,000. And if I use 122 a square foot, that gives me 432. So I think that this real estate agent priced this property well. They did the right thing, which is why Todd is considering putting an offer on this property. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. That should make a lot of sense to you guys. Okay. So great job, Esteban. 468 is right on the money. Okay. So you guys are getting this now. This is what we do. So that should kind of give you a good picture of what we should do. So once again, if I was Todd, maybe I go in with this at closing cost. But guess what, guys? If they tell me that there's other offers on the table, okay, and that this property's hot, I wouldn't get cute. I would offer full price, or maybe some people are trying to offer over full price for this property. Okay, so let me go back to the chat. Let's do the second property that we had here. So we spent a lot of time on that, guys, and that's fine because we were able to learn a lot through just doing one comp. Okay, you don't have to do a ton of comps to see what I'm looking at. So we spent a lot of time on that. So let's do 11-0, and I might not get to a lot of you guys this one. I'm sorry, guys, because these do take a long time, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so let's go with this 1101 Buttercup Lane. So 1101 Buttercup. So this is a great example of how we're going to look for a property that's a listing and we don't have the specs on the MLS because this property is not listed. So 1101 Buttercup was in Orlando, great, Orange County. So we're going to go back to the Stellar MLS, and we're going to go to a new search. Okay. And we're already in Orange County. Once again, make sure you're in the right county because that's usually your first culprit. So let's go 1101 Buttercup. All right. 1101 Buttercup. Bam. There it is. Okay. So we've got, this is a potential listing. The owner is Griselda Melgoza. We've got the lot size is 0.3 acres. So just over a quarter acre. Okay, we can scroll down here. She's paying $1,500 in taxes. That ain't bad. That's pretty cheap. I won't spend any time on this, guys, but this says now what I love about iMapp, it tells you when things are located in an opportunity zone. Go ahead and Google opportunity zones on your own time. There are some great tax advantages for buying things in opportunity zones, in particular commercial properties. But I just love the fact that they actually tell you, hey, this is located in an opportunity zone. So we can see what she bought it for. So they bought it for $147,500 in 2013. Okay, so $147,500 is what they bought it for. And so let's write down our specs here so we can compare apples to apples. So we've got 1,682 square feet. Okay, 1,682 square feet. This is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. And by the way, guys, public records isn't always accurate. So, you know, sometimes you want to ask the seller too, is like, hey, I just want to verify this. I'm looking in public records, says you have 1,682 square feet and you're 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Sometimes they'll be like, no, this is a 4-3. So just double check that with your seller and things like that, because sometimes they make mistakes. It doesn't look like they have a pool. It was built in 1961. But it says effective date 1986. Okay, so what that means is it was updated sometime in 1986, but it is still a 1961 property. So we have to take that into consideration when we're comparing other properties, because obviously if we're comparing a property that was built in 2020 versus 1961, we're going to have to make some adjustments. Okay, so now we have our specs. Okay, and I believe this is going to be a single family home. Yes. Okay, so we're good there. We have our specs. I'm going to go ahead and, pro tip, I usually just copy the address from here because I'm going to copy and paste it into my MLS. So now you guys should be familiar with what you need to do in criteria. So I'm going to go back to my criteria again: residential detail, active, pending, sold. Okay. Special sales provision, none. I'm looking at only single family residences. Okay, let me look at my chat real quick. I see some of you guys are talking. Okay. 122 times. Yep. Okay, cool. Oh, so Rebecca, Rebecca said, jump down, can you give me your formula for how you came up with 468? So 468 was just the square footage times the sold price per square foot of the other property. So that's how I compare apples to apples. So that property happened to be $132 per square foot, and then I multiplied it by my square footage, which is 3547, and that's how we came up with 468. But that obviously was not the right price for that property. Okay, so once again, active, pending, sold, special sales provision, none. Going to click single family residence. I only want to look at apples to apples, and let's do our square footage range. Okay, so let's do 1682 plus 20%. So 1682 plus 20%. That gives me 2018. you know, so I'm going to give them an extra, I'll just give it up to 2,100. Okay. And we have 1682 minus 20%. And it gives me 1345. Let's give it 1300 just to give it an extra square feet. So I'm only looking at properties that are 1300 square feet to 2100 square feet now. Okay. So once again, we go to the map and we're going to jump to our address. So now it's going to take us. So we're not going to have the luxury this time, guys, of seeing the interior of the property. So that brings me to another point. So let's go back to iMapp real quick and see if there's any building photos for this property. Okay, it does look like there's some photos in iMapp. So this is the exterior of my subject property. It actually looks very well maintained. Nice property, nice little carport, okay? So this is my property, this is my exterior, okay? If I wanted to go into Google Maps and take a look, because once again, I don't have the luxury of seeing the interior, but I can get at least a look of the exterior of this neighborhood and see what it looks like. So if I go in here, and I put it into my Google Maps, okay, I can go in here and take a look at the street view. And there's my property, okay? And I can kind of look around the neighborhood and see, you know, what the other properties look like. So mine is, you know, the decent neighborhood, nothing, you know, super out of control, but my property actually looks pretty decent compared to some of these other ones. Mine looks pretty nice. I like the way my exterior looks versus some of the ones that I'm seeing here. Okay. So this is, you know, just a good way to look around and see what kind of neighborhood you're in, what things look like. And once again, I kind of like the way mine looks versus some of these other ones. I mean, this was taken in 2013 when they bought it. Might not look exactly the same, but it looks pretty clean. Okay. So now I got a good picture of what things look like. So let me go back to my matrix and let me go ahead and put the address in there. And let's jump to that address. Bam, it's going to zoom me in to this area. So right now, I'm not seeing, I'm scrolling around because right now in my area, I'm only seeing, and at least in this area, because I want to kind of stick to my specific area, because here's the deal, guys. If I jump Rouse Road here, this is a major road, I could be in a totally different neighborhood over here, okay? And so right now the prices seem very similar. So I might have to take some properties over here, but I kind of wanted to see if there was more stuff on this side here. So it looks like there's some stuff over here. It looks like similar style properties going on here, because I'm looking at the prices just to kind of see. I'm going to click on one of these just to kind of take a quick look, because I want to see the age of these properties. I want to make sure that if I do go ahead and take some of these properties into consideration, that I'm looking at properties that are similar. So this one was built in 1990. So mine was effective date 1986. So it's kind of similar. So that's one. Let me take a look at this one and see when this one was built. But these properties, as you can see, they don't look the same as mine. I mean, this is like a more planned neighborhood. You know, the neighborhood that you just saw, it's just not same apples to apples. This is why I don't like jumping streets. This is why I don't like using the radius tool, because if I were to use that radius tool, you know, I would take properties that looked like, you know, this one looks okay, but let me take a look. This is a different style of property than those planned neighborhoods. And I would be taking properties that just don't look the same. Let me take a look at this one. This one looks a little bit more traditional too. So mine is kind of an older model type of home with a carport. I really want to see if I can find some properties that are more like mine. Let's take a look at this one. No, that has a garage and everything. So interesting, because mine's kind of a unique deal when it comes to the way that it looks. So this is a little bit tougher one, guys. This is what happens. You know, you get into these areas and you're gonna get a mixed bag. So I might actually take some of these properties around here and take take a look at all of these neighborhoods and see kind of how they compare. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in here. Actually, I'm going to use a polygon for this one and take a look at this, and we can always narrow it down. But at least I can take a look at this area here and see. I see somebody's in the chat, so let me see what you guys are talking about. Yeah, very good, Esteban. Esteban says it could look at like crap now as well. Exactly. So we don't know that yet until you show up to the property. You don't know the condition until you know, but we're going to get at least a number in our minds, and we're going to have evidence of that number when we show up to that property. If we walk into that property and it's immaculate and it's been remodeled, then we can make adjustments. If we walk in and it's a hoarder, you know, and it's like torn up, then we're going to have to make adjustments downward. Okay. So, oh yeah. So yeah, that polygon, Rebecca. So Rebecca says, I like this polygon tip. Yeah, the polygon is really effective, especially when you have a weird shaped neighborhood and you're trying to stay in the neighborhood. And that's why I don't like the radius tool. In this case, I'm actually doing something. Actually, now that you mention it, Rebecca, you know what I'd like to do here before I go looking on the other side of the street. Let me just go ahead and erase this. I'm going to go back to my criteria. So if I ever get in a spot right now, so right now, like really close to me are just these two here. And then I have this kind of older section of the neighborhood. I'm going to first go to my criteria, and I'm going to go back in time a little farther. Okay. So, you know, things don't change that much in a year time. So unless there was a major recession in that meantime, right? So I'm going to go back to 365 days on this. Okay. I'm going to go back to 365 days and go back to my map and see if anything changed. Okay. Check this out, guys. So remember before when we had this, I didn't have any sold properties. I went back 6 more months and look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sold. Okay, now I don't want to go outside of this area. I want to see what's going on right in my little area right here. So I'm going to take this rectangle right here, and I'm going to take these right here and take a look at what's going on just in my section of the neighborhood. I see something coming up in the chat. Let me check. Yeah, absolutely, Esteban. You know, we're not necessarily, by the way, you know, the pandemic is causing some stuff, but we're not necessarily in a major price dip. And by the way, you know, my prediction is, especially in Orlando, that we might have a real estate boom after this pandemic is lifted. I think that we're going to have people coming from New York in droves to Orlando. So be ready. You know, and Rebecca says, we still have multiple offers. It's so odd. Yeah, honestly, Esteban, I'm not seeing recession here. I mean, obviously, if the pandemic goes on for a long time, you know, we could have some movement in that. But what happened in 2008 isn't what's happening now. It's something totally different. We had Carla Davis in our office had a listing the other day. She put it on the market, had 40 people on the sidewalk 6 feet apart waiting to get in. So, and yes, Miriam, we're way more prepared. But remember that the 2008 crisis wasn't a pandemic crisis. It was directly tied to real estate. The problem with the 2008 crisis was we were lending money to people who couldn't afford those loans. We were lending money to people with adjustable rate mortgages where they had these super low payments for 2 years, and then those payments skyrocketed in the 3rd year or the 4th year or the 5th year. So that was directly related. This is like totally unseen, right? And like I said, I think that the people from New York, look, Rebecca says, I had a client in New York that just flew down to see one house. He drove to PA to fly here since they closed flights. People want out of New York. Absolutely. I think people are going to be in New York right now, and they're going to look at their apartment building and say, I don't want to live in this death box. You know, I don't want to live in this place with 1,000 people stacked on top of me. I want to go someplace where there's land. I want to go someplace where for a fraction of the price, I can buy a brand new, spanking new home right here in a sunny weather with better taxes, and I have a yard and space in between my neighbors. I think it's going to be freaking a huge boom that's about to happen. So once again, let's go back to what just happened here, guys, which is in talking to Rebecca, I actually thought, wait, let's go back a year versus 6 months and see if we find. I mean, look what just happened. We literally didn't have any solds. I just went back 6 more months, and now I have all these solds I can look at. So let's go to the results, okay? And let's look at our single line display. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna have to do the drop down again and get my comp display so we can look at this objectively. Okay, so we know that our property is a 4.2. Okay, so we have plenty of 4.2s that have sold here. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these 4.2s. So we can start with this one. This is a 4.2, 1,580 square feet, very similar to ours. Ours is 1,682 square feet. It looks like most of these sold price per square foot are hovering around the same place, 167, 162, 160, 171. So, you know, that's pretty good. That gives me a good sense that, you know, it's pretty consistent in this area. But let's take a look at what this one looks like. This one's a quarter acre, 1970. Ours, our initial date was 1961, effective date 1986. Took 39 days to sell. Looks like it does have a pool, so that could make a little bit of a difference. But let's just take a look at what this thing looks like. Okay, so we're taking a look at this property here. Decent property, exterior is okay, you know, nice, clean. Okay, this looks like it has some upgrades. Once again, guys, don't take your picture vertically with your camera. Take it like this so we don't have this white space around, because this picture would have been way more lovely if it was filling the whole space. But I can see by this is an upgraded kitchen. I mean, it has this drop down here. It has the granite or quartz or whatever this is, stainless steel. So they've done some things to this property. There's a nice picture. Okay. Nice upgrade. Same thing. Don't take the picture vertical. I mean, I don't think I needed to see, you know, 10 pictures of the oven, but neither here nor there. Looks like new carpets. Bathroom's decent, not a major upgrade, but for this neighborhood, I mean, this is just about the right amount of upgrading that I would do for this neighborhood. You know, if you're an investor, guys, or you're working with an investor, you know, this is about the right amount of money I would invest in upgrading a property like this, because if you over improve a property in a lower price neighborhood, you're not going to get your money back. So this is nice. You know, carpet, nothing, you know, nice bathrooms. They obviously replaced the countertops, nice little outdoor area, and then a little pool. Okay. So this is a pretty nice home. I like it. Just it looks to be probably and could be a little bit nicer than ours. Okay, but I don't know. Haven't seen the interior of ours, but this one sold for 167 a square foot. Took 39 days to sell. That's not too crazy. Let's take a quick look at what it was originally priced, 265. It was actually priced at 265. They lowered it to 259, and then they sold it. Ended up actually selling it for 265. Now, the question is here, once again, we're a detective with clues. Was this a true 265? So they lowered it to 259, and they actually had somebody offer them over the asking price. The question I want to ask myself, did they increase the price to include closing costs? Well, I can find that out, guys. If you scroll down, you can see it right here, guys. Look, seller credit, $7,800. So did they actually pay 265? No, they didn't pay. They paid they got about an $8,000 credit, so they paid closer to 257 for this property. That makes a lot of sense to me. But can you see now that with these little clues, I knew that right off the bat. That doesn't make sense. It was priced at 265. They lowered it to 259. They got a contract for 269 with 265, which is over. First thing I thought of was they probably got some closing costs, right? And sure enough, they did. So that's why you can find out all these little clues about this. But this is a pretty good comparable. I think this property's nicer. I don't think that I want to compare $165 a square foot with mine just quite yet, because I think this property is nicer than mine. Okay. So let's look at this one here, which is also a 4.2. It's a little bit smaller. So 1970, no pool, took 82 days to sell. And let's look at that one. That one's at 160 a square foot. So, was it Miriam? Do you happen to know what they want to sell it for?
No, They're just curious about.
Just curious.
Yeah.
No worries. Sounds good. So 160 a square foot. Okay, let's take a look at this one on Eastview. Okay, once again, a different style than my property. Has a two-car garage. Ours has a carport, but doesn't look that amazing on the outside either. So it is what it is. Driveway's dirty. Not a great picture of the exterior front. It is what it is. Once again, I don't know that this is the second picture that I would show, but it's a decent property. Okay, kitchen, some tile, some wood. Definitely upgraded countertops, but nothing too out of control. Stainless steel. Decent little area, some wood paneling. So those drapes are interesting. So this is the kind of stuff that if I walked in and I saw it with a seller, maybe I would say, hey, maybe we do something different with this little back area. I think some people might or might not like that, but it is what it is. Okay, so this property is one of those kind of like semi upgrades. They got some more decent countertops, but a lot of stuff going on in here. Bathroom pictures, guys, rarely help you unless the bathroom is like spectacular. In this particular case, it's not a terrible looking bathroom, but look at all this shit. I mean, all the agent had to do was remove this towel, remove this crap, and take everything off these countertops, and you would have had a way cleaner picture that would have helped you sell the property faster and for more. But they didn't know to do that. They didn't know to take all the shampoo off the bottom so we could actually see the shower and not the shampoo and what they're using for cleanliness. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on here in the back. Okay, so I got a good picture of what's going on here. This property took 82 days to sell. Ended up selling for the last price it was $239. Ended up selling for $237. 82 days is not spectacular. But let's check this out. Look, has a newer AC system, 2017. That makes me feel good about it. That's a selling point. And let's take a look at what happened here. So they sold it for $237. They gave $1,000 credit. So really they sold it for $236. The original price was $245. So they priced it at $245, had to lower it, and then sold the property. So this one might actually be worse than mine, but let's just, for shits and giggles, let's do our square footage with $160 a square foot. So this is the problem, Rebecca, right here. So this is what we did before. So I'm taking the square price per square foot here. I say, let's say this is comparable to mine. Let's take $160 a square foot that it sold, and let's compare it to our square footage range. So our square footage is 1,682 square feet. So you guys can do this problem here. I'll open up the chat. So ours is 1,682 square feet times 160, and that gives us a price of $269,120. Okay, so I'm not telling you that that's the right price for it, Miriam. What I'm telling you is that I at least have a number in my head. Okay, because now what we can do is I have a number. It's at 269. Okay, so it's 269 in my head. So I have something to work with. But let's take a look at some of these other properties. Now here's one that's on the market for $235,000. It's been only on the market for 15 days. But let's take a quick look at our competition here. Let's take a look at what's happening with this active property. Well, right off the rip, this is one terrible picture, right? And this is actually looks like it was stolen from somebody else because it says Stellar MLS on. I don't know, or maybe that's just what they do in it. But you see these pictures like this. It almost looks like they took it from somewhere else, and that's why these pictures are really small. So they didn't even take the time to take their own pictures. So that's not going to help. Okay, so this property might sit longer than it needs to. This property needs upgrading. Okay, so definitely no upgrades. Okay, so this property here, which is priced at 143 a square foot, it's a 4.2, needs some work. I could see somebody coming in here who's willing to do some remodeling and buying this property maybe a little bit lower than this price. But this is not necessarily the quality of property that, I mean, I don't know the quality of your property, Miriam, but at the same time, this one does have a garage. It's a different, it's a different style property than yours. I think this is the better this is more, I guess, a traditional style property. So I could see it being more attractive in that sense, the fact that it has a garage and a layout. It's just currently it's marketed poorly. I could see it sitting on the market for a while. It has shitty pictures. It's not updated. But once again, to kind of get a number in our head, let's take a look at $143 a square foot, and let's see what ours would be valued at if we did $143 a square foot. So if it was $143 per square foot times our square footage, that brings me to 240,000. Okay. So yours would be priced a little bit above that. Let me look at the chat, see what you guys came up with. There you go. Miriam, right on the money, 240. Let's see. I've always selected my closest sold comparables out of the top 3, then divided by 3 to get the average for my suggested list price. So Rebecca wrote, I've always selected my closest sold comparables, added the top 3, and then divided by 3 to get the average for my suggested list price. And essentially, that's not a terrible way to do it, right? So if you think that, there's 3 properties that are very, very close to where you're at and taking the average. I'm looking a little bit more granular about it because there are certain factors, Rebecca, that I think affect it, that I can only see going individually. And that's why, essentially when I just do a price per square foot like I'm doing right now, it's just to kind of get a number in my head to see where I'm at compared to everything else. I've had properties in this neighborhood sell up to 265,000 that are a lot nicer than mine. And I start to think to myself, what would somebody pay for my style of property? For instance, let's look at Murdoch here that sold at 143 a square foot. And this other property here that's priced at 143 is still on the market. It hasn't sold yet. So it looks like my competition right now is in the 140s. So let me look at this one right here at 831 Murdoch. Okay, so 831 Murdoch. Same thing, nothing too special, but very clean, well-maintained property, not necessarily upgraded, but looks clean, So, some upgrades, some interesting color and tile choices, but a clean property. I could do a lot with this property if I bought it. You come in there, do a different paint job, and that roof looks real nice. It almost looks new to me. So let's look in the description. Oh, new roof 2018, new AC 2014. So this property here, look at this, guys. 7 days. Okay. They priced it at $143 a square foot. Took 7 days to sell it to 3.2. Ours is a 4.2. Okay. So ours could be higher than this. But this makes me feel good. I mean, they did the right thing with this property. I think they priced this property right. They cleaned it up as good as they could. It looked well maintained. And guess what? With a new roof and new AC, somebody looked at this neighborhood and said, hey, look, for $215,000, I'll come in here, I'll give it a paint job, and things sold in a week. Okay? It was a vacant property, easy to show. They even gave a seller credit for $3,600, so they actually sold it closer to $212, $213. They offered 3%. They offered 3% to the agent, which is smart. So I don't know. I'm kind of liking Miriam. I'm kind of liking this $140 a square foot range for you because your property doesn't actually look. Your property style is a little bit different. It has a carport. I'm hoping that the inside looks clean and well maintained like those pictures did on the outside. So I'm thinking that, you're closer to that 240 mark as far as a list price. Okay. Maybe a 239.9 Miriam would be something. What were you thinking, Miriam? Or did you have a number in your head, Miriam?
Actually, I had a much lower number, so this is really good. I was
Okay.
thinking 220 for some reason.
No,
So
no, and you might not be wrong. This is where it's the art and the science. Okay, this property that sold for 143 has a pool. It's a different style of property. Yours just happens to be a little bit bigger, and it's a 4.2. It's really, put it this way: if you walk into the inside of that property and it's nice and it's clean and it's well maintained, and you get a good feeling about the look of the inside, then you might be able to do a 239.9 situation. Okay. If not, I think you're closer to that 220, 219.9. Okay. So I think you're right there. I think you're right in that ballpark. Yours is a different style of property. So I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Okay. I think that maybe 239.9 is probably the high range. And maybe that 215 to 219.9 is your lower range, and then you can kind of adjust accordingly. So that's something that she's going to have to do when she gets there, right? We're just giving you the range of what things look like. I really like the way it looked like that property from these pictures was like a nice, cute property, well maintained. But like Esteban says, this might not. This was from 2013, so this might not be the way it looks now. You might walk up there and be like, oh, this property, whatever. And then I might go back to the detailed report. I'm going to check one more thing too that might affect us, which is what it's built with. So I want to make sure, okay, it's concrete block. So that's good. People tend to like concrete block properties more. They're more solid, less termite problems, things like that. So I want to make sure that ours wasn't like wood frame compared to some of these block properties. So does that give you a better picture now, Miriam, of kind of what's going on?
yes, I already texted her, so let's see if she's still interested.
Yeah, exactly. So now say, hey, look, my next step is I want to show you what I found. I want to show you what the research I found. I want to take a tour of your property, and I want to inspect it and see what we have going on. And at that point, you'll be able to make a strong decision about the neighborhood. We did look around that neighborhood, and it wasn't that spectacular, that like the homes in that particular section. So I think you're probably closer to your 220 mark, to be quite honest with you. But I'm hoping that when you walk into her house, there's some nice, upgrades, or it looks really nice. And in that case, maybe you go 229.9, or whatever the case may be. So that's how you're going to kind of judge it. And here's what I will tell you guys. So we're kind of at the end of the class, and I'll take some questions here. But here's what you have to know about this. It's really easy to overprice a property, but really hard to underprice it. Because here's the deal, guys. Your sellers are always going to want to get the most, which is what you want to get for them. But the problem is that most sellers don't know how to get the most. They just think that they want to price it high. Okay, so they want to price it high. And they think that, okay, so we think this property should be, let's say 219.9, okay? And so Miriam, we think it's 219.9, and they say, yeah, but let's price it at 240, because I think somebody's going to come in and offer, something less, and we'll negotiate in the middle. Well, that's not true, because what's going to happen is two things. One, remember that if somebody's approved for 220, their searches go up to 220. So are they going to even see your property priced at 240 when they do a search? No, which means nobody's going to come see your property, and there's going to be no competition, and you're not going to have those eyes on the property. Okay, that's a problem. Remember, my slogan is, I want competition, not crickets. Competition is what gets you the most for your property. It isn't pricing it high, okay? Because once again, you're going to price it at a price that's too high, and all the people that can afford, because if you price it at 240, the person that's qualified for 220 is not going to see it. The person that's qualified for 230 is not going to see it. The person who's qualified for 235 is not going to see it. So you just wasted that whole market. They didn't see your property. So what's going to happen? It's the same thing's going to happen that happened with the first property we comped. or one of the first ones we looked at, where that property sat on the market, and you were having to lower your price, and you're losing leverage every day. So by the time you actually get down to the price it's supposed to be at 220, Miriam, what's going to happen is those initial buyers are gone. They've already bought another property. And now your property is what they call stale, right? Your property sat on the market for 60 days. So a guy like me, I'm working with a client and I'm looking at this, and what's one of the first things I look at is days on market. And I say to myself, man, this property sat on the market for 60 days. Maybe this seller's desperate. Maybe there's something wrong with the property. What's the issue here? So now I'm looking at your property like it has issues, or like maybe I can get a deal on it. So guess what? I might not even offer you 220 for it, Miriam, because now you might actually be in a desperate situation. And right now you're not looking that hot. You know, you're looking 60 days on the market, 90 days on the market. That's why it's so detrimental to overprice a property. And you have to be able to express that in a way to your seller to help them understand that. And then the other thing was, once again, the appraisal. Hey, that's all well and good, but you think somebody's going to, the price of your property is what the market's willing to pay. Right now, as I'm looking at around, the market's not willing to pay X amount for your property. So nobody's going to offer you that. So even if we do get a contract for that, though, there's going to be an appraisal, and that appraisal is going to come out. And you know what? It might end up being 20 grand below. And now we got a situation where we have this murky deal. But the main thing that's going to happen is we're just not going to get enough attention to get a contract on it. And guess what? Same thing's going to happen to you. 6 months is going to go by. They're going to think that you suck as an agent, which is not. You just didn't price it where you should have priced it. Then they're going to go find another agent from another company. They're going to drop it to 220. That agent's going to sell it, and there goes your commission. Okay? So don't do that. Okay, guys, we're at our time, but I will open it up. Do you have any questions? Okay, so Miriam's question in the chat is, do I print out a report? Great question. So I do this a couple of ways. Sometimes I do this kind of more basic in a way. So sometimes what I do, Miriam, is I print out exactly what you see here, this single line display. And you can print out this single line display right here. If I click this single line display, you see how this print lights up. I can print out the single line display. I usually do this because I love the way that this shows all the information, and it allows me to do that kind of trick that I told you about and circle the things I'm looking at. I can circle the price per square foot I'm looking at. I can circle the square footage of a home and kind of show them. I can circle the days on market. They're like, yeah, you want to price it. You want to price it at the same price as 955 Sonata Lane. That's cool, but look at how many days it's been on the market. Well, it's been on the market for 62 days and still hasn't sold. Are you planning? How long do you want to take to sell this property? So I often print this out. And then what I do is I print out the comparables that I'm using as well. So then I'll go actually into the, listing. Well, I can do it here too. Like, let's say I wanted to print these three out. I can print those out and print what they call the customer synopsis for that property, or even the broker synopsis for that property, because it shows you the realtor remarks and things like that. And the same thing, I kind of circle what's going on. Now, one thing that I would do if I was going to do it in this basic way, okay, so if you want to do it basic like this, I would also print out the pictures so you can actually print out. So if I press print here, you'll see it gives me options of what I can click. So if you click here, more, these are all the things I can print. So I can print the print customer all photo flyer, okay? But the ones that you use the most are the broker synopsis, which gives you like the agent information and the stuff that goes right to the that goes only to realtors. And then you can print out the customer synopsis as well. So print customer synopsis. So that's what I use the most. So if you're gonna do it this way and just print out the listings, print out the single line display, I would also print out this photo flyer for your comps, because it allows you to actually show them pictures of another property. So if they say, oh, well, I want to sell it the same price as this, then I can say, but look at the interior of that property. They obviously put about $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 into it. I want to be able to show them that, Miriam. But here's the other thing. Here's the other thing you can do. So this is how you can make your reports look really pretty if you want to do it. Okay. So let's say these are my comparable. Let's say these are the comparables I want to use here. Okay. If you look here on this bottom, these tools that you have here, there's this one called Cloud CMA. So this I often bring just so they have like some big, pretty package. The only reason I don't like the Cloud CMA is because they give you so much information that it's hard to, you know, most sellers or buyers aren't going to be that sophisticated to look through reports and all sorts of stuff. So this makes it look really pretty and prints out some really pretty pictures. But I often bring it to them just to kind of give them like something to lay on the table that makes them feel like I did like all this extra work. And I like it too because it does show all the pictures and it helps me use it there. So if you want to print something out that looks awesome, you can use this Cloud CMA. So click the listings you want to use as part of your comp. So I've done that here on the left, and then I go to Cloud CMA. Okay, and I think it was a 1101 butter comp. So it's being slow, but this is what pulls up. So you can put your new CMA and say, you know, let's say Miriam is the client. Okay, so you can put the client's name, and then you can put in the address 1101 Buttercup, and it should pull up. There it is right there. That's in Orlando, Florida. And so beds, we know the baths are 4-bed, 2-bath. We know it's 1687 square feet. We can fill all this stuff out. Residential, subtype, whatever. So now we have this, and you can even add a cover photo. So let's say you took a photo of the exterior front, you can add a cover photo of the property to personalize it even more. But you can see here on the bottom that it has the listings that I've already asked it to pull into this report. And all I have to do is fetch listings. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can play with this, Miriam, but it's a really, really cool program. And I'll just publish the report as it comes up so you can see what it looks like at the end. So you can actually go through the different sections of this report, and you can customize it the way you want to see the report. But what I'm going to do is just publish it so you can see what it looks like at the end. So if I press customize report, let's say, and you know, I can actually put the different details that I want to include in my report, but I've already have those in there. Let me just publish it so you can see what it looks like. So you can know that you can have something that looks nice and pretty and nice and well done for them. So I'm printing out I'm publishing your report right here. And when it comes up, I'll just let you view it. So that's the program that you would use if you want to do something pretty. There's a lot of other programs too, by the way, Miriam. This is just the one that I've used before. And there's several tools in the MLS that, I mean, this thing's super powerful, but I just wanted to show you what the report looks like. So if you put a custom photo, you can actually put the photo of their home here, but if not, it'll pull something like this and shows you like where their home is. You know, it'll have the address prepared for whoever the seller is. So it's nice and personalized. You can have your information sheet really nice in the front here with all your stuff in there, your logo, all that good stuff. And then the property details. These are all the properties that we're using. So this report actually didn't print out all the stuff that I wanted to. It just printed out a bunch of the listings. But you can actually have it pull up like a map of where it's taking the comps from, and a lot of other things. I don't know. It looks like it doesn't have like all the features that I have in here, but it has like a sold property analysis, like average sold price 237,100. Average price, price per square foot average, $160 a square foot. Like I said, we think it's more closer to that 140. $140 square foot mark or below. But, this actually came out close to where we were talking about, which is either 239.9 or, anywhere from 219.9 to 239.9. But once again, what I like about this is these pictures. So I can show them and say, look, you see this property here? Okay. If she wants to sell it for 235, it needs to look like this. And if it doesn't look like this, then we got to make some adjustments. By the way, this one has like a little pool and everything like that. So that's what I use, Miriam. Francisco had to go. So cool. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Miriam. And Rebecca says, I use the slideshow for my listing presentation. Rebecca, is the slideshow, is that one of the functions on the MLS, or where's the slideshow at if you're still there? We'll see. Any other questions, guys? I don't see anything else popping up. Well, nope. No questions. All right, guys, that's it. I did record this, so I will go ahead and post this in the Alliance Home Team. So you'll have something to review. And you can always go back over it. Also, so you guys know, I'm going to put this in the group chat too. I've done a comp video. So as many of you know, I did a website where I do a lot of videos and I post a lot of stuff in there that you guys ask me all the time. So if you go to jointdp.com/videos, I'll put that in the chat here. I actually have a comping video in there. So if you, tomorrow you get a deal, hopefully, and you're like, oh crap, I don't remember half the shit Bobby said. No problem. Go to the video in there, take a look. You'll be able to review this, but once again, this will be in the Alliance Home Team as well. So you'll be able to review this class. Thank you, Sonny. I appreciate you guys. That's it. And have a great Thursday. Thanks, Sylvie. Take care, guys.